Shulam Aleichem, everybody. Today's daf is daf Yud Beis. We start from the Mishnah and daf Yud Aleph, Amud Beis. Look, the Mishnah. Pesach sheshachto shachris barbasa shloi l'shmoi. Person shechts the carbon Pesach in the morning of the 14th. The morning of the 14th, Pashtas is not the Zman carbon Pesach. The Torah says, Bein Arbayim, Yelis Tishchat al Chametz Dam Zivchi. It's only in the afternoon when you can't eat chametz anymore. It's past Chatzos, but this guy decides, he's reason Makdiman, yeah? And he wants to do the mitzvah in the morning. Can't wait. He shechts it, but in his haste, he shechted it shaloi l'shmoi. He shechted it l'shem shlamim. Rabbi Yeshua machshir, Rabbi Yeshua says it's kosher. Because b'shayim ha'shana, if you shecht the carbon pesach shaloi l'shma, it's kosher. It's only bezmanoi that it becomes possible. But b'shayim ha'shana, it's kosher l'shem shlamim. Yeah, Rabbi Yeshua machshir ki ilu nishchat b'shloisha. So the fact that it's the morning of the 14th doesn't matter. It's still not the time. So that's called shloi bezmanoi. Ben Beseira poisel. Ben Beseira says it's posel. Wow, interesting. Even though it's shachris, it's not the time yet. But he says ki ilu nishchat bein arbayim. If it's already the morning of the 14th, it's like it was shechted bein arbayim. Amar Shimon ben Azai. So Shimon ben Azai said, "Mekubel ani mipi shivim ushnayim zokein." I have a tradition. I have a Kabbalah from 72 zokein. Rashi says right away it should be plural zakenim, but the Gemara is going to ask it later, so we'll wait for that. So he said, "I have a Kabbalah b'yoyim shayishivu es Rabbi Eliezer b'yeshiva." The day they sat, Rabbi Eliezer in the yeshiva, shekala Zvachim anacholan shenizbuchu shlosh maksherin elo shlo olbam shem chayva. Almost identical to the first line in the Mishnah of the beginning of the Masechta, but with one change. They add azvachim hanacholan that you could eat, which means, says the Gemara, chutz min haPesach min hachatas v'lo ha'iseh ben azeh elo oila. Oila is kolol. Oila gets consumed on the mizbeach completely, so that's not necholan. So that's a part of the blacklist of Shaloi L'Shma Psulin, right? There's Pesach, Chatas, Rabbi Eliezer says also Osham. And Ben Azai says I have a Kabbalah from the 72 Zkenim that it's also Oila. V'lo hoidu lechacham lecham were not Moida. Says the Gemara, Omer Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer said, Omer Rabbi Ishia, in the name of Rabbi Ishia, Machshir hoye ben Beseira, the Pesach sheshachte shachris bar basar l'shmai. Ben Beseira was Machshir. A carbon Pesach that was shechted, l'shem carbon Pesach, in the morning of the 14th. Now, which is interesting, because the rest of the year, if you shecht a carbon Pesach, l'shem carbon Pesach, it's possible, right? But the morning of the 14th, he considers Zmanoi, the kula yoyim zimnehu. The whole day is the Zman, k'shech the carbon Pesach the whole day. So here, very black and white statement. He says that the morning of the 14th is the time, just like in the afternoon, he expands it clearly, kula yom azemnehi. So Gemara asks, so my ki'ilu, Mishnah's lashon is, when the Mishnah talks about shechting a carbon Pesach in the morning of the 14th, shaloi lishma, and Beseira says that it's possible because it's considered ki'ilu nishchat bein rabayim, it sounds like it's not kol hayoyim zimnehu. It's not kula yom zimnehu. It sounds like it's only a ki'ilu. So why in the Mishnah does Beseira say ki'ilu? I did Amr Bishua ki'ilu, Amr Yonami ki'ilu. Since Bishua says ki'ilu, he also says ki'ilu. Asks the Gemara, Yachid the miflegi b'shloi l'shmai, liflegu b'l'shmai. If the truth is that the whole day of the 14th is the zman of shchitas carbon Pesach, then let them argue. In a regular case, a guy brings the carbon Pesach to the Azara, to the Beis Hamikdash, on the morning of the 14th. He shechts it l'shem carbon Pesach when Beseira says, kosher, kol hayom kule zmanoyu. It's the zman carbon Pesach. And the Rabbi Yeshua will say it's possible because it's not the zman. Why do we have to argue about a case of shaloi l'shma? Says the Gemara, I'll tell you why. Because if l'gu b'l'shma v'mina v'l'shaloi l'shma, I would have said, Dafka l'shma, if you shech the carbon Pesach l'shma on the morning of the 14th, That's what's machlokes whether it's kosher or apostle. But Meseir says it's kosher because the whole day is this man, and Rabbi Shua says it's apostle. But if it's sheloi lishma, maybe Rabbi Shua is moided to ben Beseir because then according to ben Beseir it'd be apostle, right? Because it's a pesach sheloi lishma bezmanoi. So maybe Rabbi Shua would be machmer like a ben Beseir in that case. Hoyle miktsasei roi. Since lamaisa half the day it's already roi for the shechita. Shechita's carbon pesach after chatzos. Kamash Malan that he's arguing even in that case and he's machsher. Right, like almost like a koich that teira odif. Okay. Says the Gemara, how could Ben Beseira say that kol hayoim of the 14th, even Shachris, is this man shchita carbon pesach? For the Gemara, v'oeksiv ben arbayim. The Torah says mafurish ben arbayim chatzos. How could Ben Beseira say against the Torah? How could he hold against? Say it's Shachris also. Amar Ula Breder Velo Ben Shnei Aravim. It means Beshnei Aravim. Between the two evenings, Rashi says, between the two evenings, Ma'alois HaShachar Tzkis HaChama. Dainu Ben Soif Erev de Esmoil Atchilas Erev de Urta. So between the two evenings. Says the Gemara, Tamid D'chsiv Bein Rabbayim Achanami D'kula Yoyma. Kasher asks the Gemara, what about a carbon Tamid? It says Ben Arbayim there, right? The carbon Tamid shall Ben Arbayim after Chatzos. Are you trying to tell me Ben Arbayim over there means also Ben Aravim and you can do it in the morning as well? So the Gemara says no, for sure not. Hasam D'chsivas HaKeves Echad Taseh B'Baiker. It says in the Torah clearly you should do one keves in the morning. Michlal de Ben Arbayim Mamish. So must be, if you already have one in the morning, so Ben Arbayim over there means Ben Arbayim means Chatzos and on. Asks the Gemara, Mechad B'Baiker Idach Kula Yoyma. So say, yeah, you do one in the morning, and the other can be done the whole day. Why do you limit the other to Bein Arbayim? Learn Bein Arbayim means Bein Aravim, and the second keves can be Nikrav the entire day, and the first keves only in the morning. Says the Gemara, no. Echad B'Boiker v'Lashnayim B'Boiker. L'maisa, the Torah says you can only do one in the morning. So that one in the morning excludes the other one from being nikrav in the morning, and it can only be done in the afternoon. That's why over there, Ben Arbayim, taka means in the afternoon. Okay, says the Gemara, Neiro is the Ben Arbayim. What about the menorah? It says Ben Arbayim, so you're going to translate it Ben Aravim. Chanami de kula yom kasher. It says, well, Shani os d'chsiv me'erev v'ad boiker. Stay clear in the Torah, me'erev v'ad boiker, and we learned, V'tanya me'erev v'ad boiker, tell me dostre delekas v'lechas me'erev v'ad boiker. Make sure you put enough oil in it, right? So that it has enough fuel to stay lit from the evening until the next morning. Right? There's no other avoida from all the avoidas mentioned during the day, right? Any avoidas adam from karbonis, kmitza from menachas, k'toiris. Yeah, the last avoida has to be the menorah. That's the one that starts Me'erev, which is the closing avoida of all avoidas in the day. K'toiris, d'chsiv ben Arbayim, asks the Gemara by K'toiris, it says also ben Arbayim. So you're going to say ben Aravim, K'toiris, chanami d'kula yom kosher. Tell me the whole day K'toiris is kosher. Yeah, it's not mistaber because K'toiris we know, yeah, the second K'toiris was 2 times. They're makti K'toiris every day. Second K'toiris is in the afternoon, right? We never heard anybody hold that you could do both in the morning. Says the Gemara, no, Shani K'toiris is different. The Iskash L'Neiros, Bein Arbayim. So it's Iskash L'Neiros, and just like Neiros means Me'erev ad Boiker in the evening, so too, the second K'toiris of the afternoon has to be done in the evening time, meaning in the afternoon. Can't be done in the morning. Hagam it says Bein Aravim, Bein Arbayim. So the Gemara asks, what do you mean? Osam Namiksiv. Once you're telling me that wherever it says Me'erev, like by Menorah, right? Even though it says Bein Arbayim, it means later, right? You can only do it later in the afternoon. Osam Namiksiv, Shom Tizbachas HaPesach Ba'orev. It also says by the Shchitas Pesach, it says Be'erev. So how could Ben Beseira say you could do the whole day because it's Bein Arbayim, which is Bein Aravim, but it says Be'erev? Where it says, no, that pasuk I need for a different drasha. Hu yulo uchar dover hu da'asa. That drasha is coming to teach me that although usually the carbon tamid has to come last, it's the closing carbon of the day. It says in the pasuk, Oleo hashleim kol ha-karbonis kulam. That's the hashlam of all the karbonis of the day. So the tamid shel ben arbaim is the last carbon. Says the Gemara. So here the Torah teaches Shom tizbach asa Pesach be'erev. Pesach is an exception. It can be nikrav even after the carbon tamid shel ben arbaim. It's an exception. Yahuli uchar davar da'asa. The Tanya uchar davar shnei by be'erev ben arbaim. Let the Pesach come afterwards, last, because it says the word erev and ben arbaim. L'davar, let it come after the davar shloi never ben arbaim belvad, which is the carbon tamid shel ben arbaim. Asks the Gemara, Mikamidi, di l'shachet le'metzafra amr zimnehu v'chimot ben arbaim amr yuchar davar. So 1 second, let's get this straight. The carbon Pesach, according to Ben Beseira, you could check the entire day, from the morning and on. But once afternoon hits, now Tamid has to come first, and you uchar davar, then the Pesach comes afterwards. Where do you find such a concept? So Gemara says, yeah, and to Amr Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, halacha is, musaf, you could daven all day. Right? It's a Mishnah, Tfilas HaShachar, and Brachas, you daven all day. But what happens if you didn't daven musaf by Chatzos? Now you got to daven mincha and musaf. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan says, mispalul shel mincha, v'achar kach mispalul shel musafin. 1 second. So musaf you have very similar to the carbon Pesach according to Ben Beseira. You can do it all day, and yet when Chatzos hits, you got to do the Tamid first, just like you do the mincha first. Okay, the Gemara says, okay, very nice. But Lamaisa, if the menorah and the Ketores can only be done later in the afternoon, right? The second Ketores and the menorah, the lighting of the menorah, Me'erev, because it's Me'erev ad Boiker and Ketores is Iskish Laneiros. So why do you write Ben Arbaim altogether? Why does the Torah have to kind of confuse us, seemingly, by writing Ben Arbaim, if anyways the Akpada is to do it in the evening? Because Ben Arbaim, according to Ben Beseir, means Ben Aravim the whole day. So why confuse us with Ben Arbaim, which means Ben Aravim, making us believe they could do it the whole day? Ben Arbaim is the Chesiv Gabik Teres V'neiris Lamali. Why are you writing Ben Arbaim there? V'oid, Nachakasha and Rab Oishi is Pshat. Again, Rab Oishi understood Ben Beseira, and he learns Ben Beseira holds that the whole day is kosher for the carbon Pesach. Asks the Gemara, V'oid, there's a brisa later where Rabbi Rabbeinu HaKadosh, answered Tachas Ben Beseira. He answered on behalf of Ben Beseira, L'divrei Rabbi Yeshua. Loi. Im amarta b'shloisha asar she'ein miktsasoi roi. B'shloisha, so how could Rabbi Yeshua compare the morning of the 14th to the 13th? There's a big difference, Rabbi asks Rabbi Yeshua on behalf of Ben Beseira. Im amarta b'shloisha she'ein miktsasoi roi. Tamir bar ba'asar she'ein miktsasoi roi. The 14th is very different. That day, on that day, after Chatzos, you could already be makravid. So miktsasa, which is miktsas of that day, it's already roi. So you can't compare the morning of the 14th to the 13th, which is not roi b'chlal the whole day. Okay. What do you see from Rebbe's Lashon in the way he responds to Rabbi Yeshua on behalf of Ben Beseira? He says that the 14th is different because miktsasa roi. Only half of that day is roi. Now, if Rabbi Oishi is right in Ben Beseira, that the whole day is this man, if it means kuloi roihu, he should have said kuloi roi. Elo Omer Rabbi Yochanan. So Zuk Rabbi Yochanan must be a different pshat in Ben Beseira. Avadu Ben Beseira agrees, too many kashas. Ben Beseira agrees that Ben Arbaim means Chatzos, and it's only Zmanoi from Chatzos and on. So Rabbi Yochanan says, so what's pshat in Ben Beseira? It says, Poisel hoye Ben Beseira bepesach sheshachta v'arbasa shachris bein l'shmoi bein shaloi l'shmoi hol miktsasei roi. Ooh. Yeah, so Rabbi Yochanan explains Ben Beseira that Ben Beseira got the that gray zone of Shachris of the 14th, according to Ben Beseira, passels on both ends. It passels a carbon Pesach Shechted L'Shmoi. Why? It's only the morning of the 14th. It's not the Zman. The Zman is in the afternoon. So it's a Pesach that you Shechted L'Shem Pesach, B'Shar Yemais Hashan, it's passel. And if you Shech the Pesach Shaloi L'Shma L'Shem Shlomim in the morning of the 14th, it would also be passel. If you're treating it like it's not the time yet, so we know Pesach Shaloi L'Shma, when it's not the Zman, is kosher. He says, no, here it's also possible. Why? Because hoyle miktsasei roi. So it's a very interesting shita. The way Rabbi Yochanan stands by Rabbi Yochanan is machmer on both counts. Right? He's saying that you're going to lose either way. Stay away from shchita on the morning of the 14th, because however you're going to shecht it is going to be wrong. We're going to passel it no matter what way you're going to shecht it. If you shecht it l'shma, l'shem the carbon pesach, it's going to be passel. Why? Because it's not the zman yet. It's not chatzois. If you shecht it shaloi l'shma, it should be kosher. If it's not the zman, shaloi l'shma shaloi b'zman is kosher by pesach. No, it'll be passel also. Hoyle miktsasei roi. So it's kind of the zman. So stay away. You cannot shecht the carbon pesach. Can't shecht the carbon pesach shachris barba aser according to Ben Beseira. The way Rabbi Yochanan understands shit is Ben Beseira. So Megadav bar Rabavo, was asking on this pshat in Cain, if it's true that according to Ben Beseira, you can't shecht a carbon pesach in the morning of the 14th, because no matter how you're going to do it, you're going to be wrong. So asks the Gemara, Pesach kosher le Ben Beseira, echem eshkachas leBravo wants to know, how can you ever bring a Pesach kosher according to Ben Beseira? Ida afer sheya idna, if you separated it in the morning of the 14th, dichumei karu. So as soon as you separated it, it was nitcha. Nitcha means it's been rejected from the mizbeach because you can't do anything with it. You can't be makriv on the mizbeach. And there's a din dichoy, right? The din of dichoy says that if there was a point in time that a carbon wasn't roi la'akrava, you can never be makriv it again. So since you separated, you designated your animal as the carbon pesach in the morning of the 14th, and the morning of the 14th, according to Rabbi Yochanan's understanding of Ben Beseira, no matter what you'll do, you can never be makriv it. L'shmo is possible, shloi l'shmo is possible. So now you have a period where this animal is dichoy, is nitcha. So it would be possible. Vida for shino me'asmoil can't be makriv it even in the afternoon anymore. Vida for shino me'asmoil. And if you separated it yesterday, so maybe yesterday was roi. If you shechted it shaloi l'shma, then it would have been a shlamim, right? Because shaloi l'shma, shaloi b'zmano, it's kosher. But then as soon as the morning hits, it's nitcha. So then it'll be nearer v'nitcha. Then it's nearer v'nitcha. So again, it'll be a problem. You can never bring that carbon after chatzos, because there will be a point in time where after you separated it, it was nitcha from the mizbeach, and kibush nitcha yitcha. You can never be makriv it again. Elamar bavo, you know what? You still have the possibility of shechting a carbon pesach if you were makdash it after chatzos. If you designate it as a carbon pesach after chatzos, so now you basically passed over, no pun intended, that period, that gray zone where it would have been nitcha, because you're only makdash it after chatzos, and that's how you could be makdash carbon pesach and erev pesach. No, even in the morning. Even if you're makdash it in the morning, we're not going to call it a nitcha. Agam, according to Ben Beseira, the way Rabbi Yochanan understands him, no matter which way you'll go, it's possible. Yeah, no problem. But ein mechusar zman leboy bayom. We don't consider it mechusar zman. Which means that if something is roi lakrova on that day, right, then that doesn't constitute as a nitcha if it's just missing a couple of hours until you can bring it out to the mizbeach. Yeah? It's not considered mechusar zman because of that. We don't label it nitcha als mechusar zman if it's boy bayon. Rav Papa ma'afilu tema me'urta. Rav Papa says, even if you makdash it the night before. According to Ben Beseira, yeah? So the night before it's already nitcha, right? Even though Laila is not zman akrova, and the next morning you can't be makriv it should be tichumei kari, it should be nitcha. Our Papa says no. Even Laila is not considered mechusar zman to passel a carbon mishum nitcha. How do I know that? Says the Gemara that's found in Be'er B'Shmuel, Lail Shmini nichnas ladir lis aser. That on the night of the 8th day of an animal's life, the halacha is, the Torah commends us, the Torah says, Shar oy kesev oy eiz ki yavoled. When you have a a little calf, a baby goat, a baby sheep, a newborn that is born, you have to give it a week to be under the care of its mother. And only from the 8th day, you can put it into the pen with all the other animals and then, have it as part of the flock and can become Meiser Behema. But before that, you can't. So what happens on the 8th night, right? You had 7 days, the animal was under the care of its mother, and then the night of the 8th day, what about the night of the 8th day? Is it, can I be makdash it? So here is the Tana of Rabbi Yoel. He had a steer in the Psukim. It says 7 days. Halaylo, which means the night after day 7, chazi. Right? That's already roy. You can already do it. And then it says in the day of the 8th and onward, you could already be makrivit. Halaylo lo chazi. Vaisto is laila, it's not chazi. It's not roy. Okay, so how are you going to resolve this contradiction between the yoim, Shivas Yomim sounds like Lail is okay, Lail Shmini is okay, and then it says, but Yoim HaShmini sounds like the Lail Shmini is not okay. Okay, it said Lail L'Kedusha V'Yoim L'Artzah, which means you could already be Magdash the night of the 8th. It's Nitche, because you can't be Makrivit then. Right? You can only be Makrivit V'Yoim L'Artzah, you can only be Makrivit on the day of the 8th. Teretz is that Laila is Ay Mechusar Zman. We don't consider Laila a Mechusar Zman where it would become a Nitche. Okay, it's not a Mechusar Zman to the point where it becomes a nitcha. Okay. Bottom line, we have a machloikus in how to understand Shitas ben Beseira. Rabbi Oshia holds, Ben Beseira says, the whole day of the 14th is kosher, is the Zman of the Karban Pesach. And Rabbi Yochanan says, nisht, only mechatzois and on, but the morning we treat as a gray zone, and it would be possible either way. Nitche. Okay, Abaye says from the morning, ein mechusas man l'boy bayoyim, or Papa extends it even to the night before. Okay. Says the Gemara, is it true that this whole din dichoy, Rabbi Yochanan agrees to this whole halacha of dichoy, that we're having this whole conversation in Rabbi Yochanan's Shita and Ben Beseira, right? So we're asking about dichoy. Dichoy meikara, nir v'nitche. Right, to Heilacher Chatzos. All this whole conversation revolves around Rabbi Yochanan. How do you know Rabbi Yochanan B'chlal agrees to the din of Nitcha, of Dichoy? Amalei, no, it's for sure he holds of it. The Rabbi Yochanan, Behema shel Shnei Shutfen, Higdash Chatzia. Behema that belongs to two partners. Higdash Chatzia, one partner is Makdash, half of the animal. Okay, so when he's Makdash half of the animal, that animal is not really like Rava, right? You can't be Makriv that animal because half the animal is Chulin, and he doesn't have the power or the ownership in the other half to be makdash it. Okay, now he's makdash half, and he purchased the other half from his partner, bought him out, the kedisha, and then he's makdash it, kedosha. So now the whole animal is kadosh, ve'ena kreva, he can never be makriv it. Why not? Because when you were makdash it earlier, when you only owned half of the animal, it wasn't really like Rav, it was nitcha. So once it was nitcha, even if you buy the other half afterwards, you can never bring it out to the mizbeach again. So kadosh v'nekreva, which is the din dichoy. Okay, v'oisa tmura, and after you buy the second half, you can be makrivit. So now it's kind of a animal that belongs to Hagdish without having the ability to bring it up to the mizbeach. If you make this animal. If you make it into a tamura, which means you take another animal and you want the kedusha of this original animal that you were former partners in with somebody else and you bought him out, you want that kedusha to go on a behem of chulin. Lacha is that the behem of chulin also v'hoya hu esmurasa yakadosh. Torah says that both become hektish, but the type of hektish that's chal on the second behema will be the same hektish that the original behema, from which you try to exchange that hektish from, it will have that same hektish and you can never be makar of it. It's morasaka yotzeba. So Gemara says Shema Mina Tlas. You see 3 halachas from this statement of Rabbi Yoel. Number 1, Shema Mina Balachayim Nitchen, that there is dichoy by animals. Shema Mina Dichoy Me'ikar Ava Dichoy. Dichoy Me'ikar. Why is it Dichoy Me'ikar? Because when the partner was Magdashit, when he only owned half, it never was Roy Lemizbeach. It was dichoy right away. And still, he says, even when you buy him out, you can never be makriv again. So you see, dichoy meikara, when it was rejected right away from the start, it's called the dichoy. Shema mina yesh dichoy b'damim. Again, the hekdesh that was chal when the first guy was magdashit, when he was still a partner, before he bought out the other guy. That hekdesh wasn't kedush saguf. Why not? Because you can't bring it as a carbon b'chlal, so it's not shaykh to be makdish the guf. So it was only makdish ladamav, which means that he could sell his partnership to somebody else, and then the money would go to hekdish. It's kedushas damim, right? Because hekdish can't take half the animal, so it's only for its value that was hekdish. And still, there was a dichoy on a hekdish of kedushas damim. So even there, you can't. You can't bring it as a carbon. Okay. Amar Ulam Rabbi Yochanan says the Gemara Ochel Chelev Kishmak. We just learned Harius. So here we go. We have a little of a repeat over here. Ochel Chelev Ifresh carbon. Guy eats Chelev b'shagig. And he's mafresh a carbon. The hamer das, and then it becomes a mumar. Now a mumar can't bring a carbon. So now he had a point in time where it was nira, could bring the carbon or mafresh the carbon before it became a mumar, and then it became a mumar. The chazer boy, and then he did tshuva, ha'ol v'nitcha yidacha. Since he was a period in time where he couldn't bring the carbon, now he can never bring it again. Yeah, you have to bring a new carbon. Itmanam yom Rabbi Yoel ochel chelev v'hifresh carbon. Guy ate chelev b'shoig, and then it's mafresh a carbon nishtata, and then he became a shaita. Shaita is not allowed. Ein bardas, you can't bring a carbon. The chazav and nishtapa, and then he became normal again. A bardas, hol v'nitcha yidacha. Again, it's nitcha, it's nira v'nitcha, hol v'nitcha yidacha. It's richi. Why does Rabbi Yochanan have to tell me both of these cases? The Ishmael Kamaisa. If it just would have told me the case of mumar, I would have said there it's a nitcha mishum du dachin afshei b'yadayim, because he was matchit b'yadayim, but he himself became a mummer by choice. It was voluntary. But over here, by nishtate, it just he became a shaita. It wasn't on his own volition. So kiyashim dami. So maybe he's like a person who is sleeping, and it's not really a nitcha, right? It's just a person goes to sleep. You can't be makar of the carbon. Not because it's a nitcha anytime a person takes a nap, right? Because it's not a bardas, he's sleeping. So here too, he's not a bardas. It's memela. It's like a sleep fell over him. It's unconscious. And maybe if you just would have told me the case of nishtata, I would have said, no, that's nitcha, because it's not up to him to get back to his normal state. But over here, by a mumar, he could do tshuva anytime. Says me tshuva. He could do tshuva. He could do tshuva. Yesh b'yod elachzer. Unbelievable lashon. The yesh b'yod elachzer. Eimaloi. I would say that maybe it's not chal a toiras dichoy on such a case, because he always has the possibility, the ability to be chayzer. Therefore tzricha. I need both cases. They're both nitcha. Okay. So dalgi gemara boyre birmi has to shaila achol chelev ifresh carbon. Person needs chelev, then he's mafresh a carbon. V'hoiru bezdin shechelev mutter. Very interesting case. And now, after he's mafresh the carbon, he wants to bring the chatas for eating chelev, for doing an avera. He hears in the news that Bezdin Sanhedrin was matir chelev. Unbelievable. For matir chelev, they had some drasha. Chelev is mutter. So what's the halacha? So you can't bring the carbon anymore. There's no chiyuv carbon on chelev, right? So now it's nitcha. But then v'chazru behen, then doesn't realize their mistake. So now he could bring the carbon. So now, mi avedichoy lo avedichoy. Is this a case of dichoy or not? Okay, it seems the Rishonim say the whole nitche was based on a mistake. It was a mistake. A psak, a tos and psak. Is that called nitche? It's Igla Muslim afraid. It was never a problem, really. It was never an issue. They made a mistake in the psak. That called nitche or not. Not just as a nitche, but this is the classic case of nitche. And Rabbi Yoel, when he would start darshaning in the sugya of dichoy, he would choose this case to start with. Why? My taima? Why is this more mistaber than the other two cases of mumar and ishtata? Teretz is awesome gavra itchem. Over there, yeah, it's a local mistake, but it's a problem. The issue is with the person, with the gavra, right? He became a mumar, or he became a shaita, but there's nothing really wrong with this chatas, right? If it would be anybody else, they could bring this chatas. But over here, because it was a Rosh Bezin for Gans Klal Yisrael, nobody was able to bring this carbon. So this is the classic case of nitcha. It's better than the other two cases. And so anyway, bottom line is, yeah, we asked, does Rabbi Yochanan hold of nitcha? You bet he holds of nitcha. Okay. So the Gemara weiter. Amashim ben Azim, Kublani Pishiv Mishnayim Zaken. Right? Ben Azai said, I have a Kabbalah from 72 Zaken. That Oila is included in the blacklist of Shloi Lishma Apostle. Says the Gemara, Loma Lemista Shiv Mishnayim Zaken. Why is it Beloshin Yachid and not Beloshin Rabbim? The Kula B'chadashit Zavakaimi. Because they were Keish Echad Belev Echad. Vayichan Shav Yisrael Neged Dahar. Right? Vayichan is Loshin Zaken because they're all united. So here too, they were all united in the same Shita. So the Gemara says, Le'oseh Ben Azai Elo Oila. Yeah, Ben Azai was a Moisef and Oila. Amr, of my time with the Ben Azai, what's his reasoning? Says the Gemara, reason is because it says, Oilahu Isherech Nechoich LaHashem. Hi Lishma Ksheira, Shaloi Lishma Psula. The word who, Oilahu, it has to be an Oila, which means Lishma. If it's not, it's possible. Asks the Gemara, Asham Nami Ksiv Behu. What do you mean? Asham also says who, right? And Ula doesn't include Asham in the blacklist, but if that's the reason for Oila, include Asham as well. Says the Gemara, Hu Lachar Aktar Semurim B'Chsiv. Now that who is after Aktar Semurim, so it's not mistaber that the who is teaching you a psul, because Aktar Semurim itself is not ma'akiv. So that who you can't really darshan. So Gemara says, Nami Lachar Aktar Semurim B'Chsiv. By Oila also. Yeah, Oilahu Isherech Nechoich LaHashem is after Aktar Semurim. So the Gemara, yeah, you're right. Trei hu ksivi. It says twice who, so from the double who, you learn that Shaloi Lishma is possible. Where's the Gabi Asham Nami Trei hu ksivi? It says also twice who. Elo Ben Azai v'Kavachomer Ma'isilam. You're right. Who is not the source of the halacha, but it's a Kavachomer. Ma chatos she'ina kolil madcha chatos that is not consumed completely on the mizbeach. Yet the halacha is shchata shloi lishma, psula is pasul. Oila shehi kala lekolshken. Oila is more chamer than a chatas. It gets consumed completely on the mizbeach. So avad should have the din of shloi lishma. It's pasul. Ask the Gemara, mal chatas nein. A chatas, you know what? The reason for a chatas is shekein mechaperes. Chatas has a tzad chamor because it's mechaper on a chet, and if it's mechaper on a chet, then that's why we're makpid on Shloi Lishma that it's possible. Hashenk and Oila. Yeah. What is Pesach Yichiach? Pesach will be Mechiach that even though it's not Mechaper on a Chet, it's still possible Shloi Lishma. So it's not, Kapar the Chet has nothing to do with it. So Gemara says, no, Mal Pesach Shken Zman Kavua, it has another Chumrah. Torah is makpid that you bring it only after Chatzos on the 14th of Nisan. You can't bring a Pesach any other time of the year. When it says Chatas Techiach, Chatas doesn't have a Zman Kavua. So Chazardin, Lori Zekrizeh, Lori Zekrizeh, Tzad Shavush Ben Shen Kachem, Shchad Shlosh Man Posla, Afani, Avi Oila, She Kachem, Shchad Shlosh Man Psula. So have a Tzad Shavush. Okay, that's how Ben Azai knows the halacha that Oila is included. That what? You have Kachem and Shachn Shloi Lishma is Posla, Afani, Avi Oila, and Shachn Shloi Lishma Posla. I mean, you can ask right away. The Rishonim already ask if that's the source for Oila, Atzara Shava from Pesach and Chatas, they're Kachem and Shachim as Pasul, so it should include all Karbanas. So why Dafka and Oila? Okay. But either way, the Gemara doesn't even like this. Mal Atzara Shava Sheben Shekeni Yesh Ben Tzad Karas. Atzara Shava, Pesach and Chatas have a Tzad Karas. Why? Because if you don't bring a Karban Pesach B'mezid, you get Karas. And the Chatas comes on an Aveira, on a Shoigig that's Doine Karas. So they all have a Karas element to them. Whereas an Oila, nothing to do with Karas. Oila could come Ben Adava, nothing to do with Karas. Gemara says, Ben Azai tzat Karas loy parich. Ben Azai doesn't like the pircha of Karas because it's not the same Karas. It's not the same case where you would get Karas. It's not like Chatas, the Karas comes on Zdoine Karas, and a Chet, which is usually Zdoine Karas. Pesach, the Karas would come if you don't bring the Karas in Pesach. So it's not Shava, the case of Karas by either one. That's why it's not a good pircha. So he blibes with the Tzara Shava. Gemara says, Osham Nami Laisi asks the Gemara, why can't Osham also be included in the Tzara Shava from Pesach and Chatas? So the Gemara says, Osham Parich, there's a pircha on Osham. Why? Malat Tzara Shava sheken yeshna betzibur kebiyachid. Yeah? There, Chatas, even though Chatas can come betzibur for sure, right? Paralam davar is a Chatas betzibur, and you also have a Pesach betzibur. Why? Even though Pesach, everybody brings their own carbon Pesach, but because they come with a tzibur, everybody brings it together, and you also have the menuyin on each carbon Pesach, the family, whoever counts, that's considered also an element of tzibur there. So that's why Osham can't be learned from the Tzara Shava of a Pesach and a Chatas. Only Oila. Oila is no problem. Oila is tzibur every day, twice a day, carbon tamid. Yeah, that's an Oila. If you by say Tzat Karas Nami Parich. Tzat Karas is also a pircha, right? So you can't learn Oila from Chatas and Pesach because of the pircha of Tzat Karas. Ben Azai, Gemara Gamerlo. Finally, Gemara comes out. Ben Azai is Makar, is the Messiah. This is the Messiah in the 7th to his kingdom. V'od the Kamer Ravuna Kavachaymer. Ravuna says it's the Kavachaymer. Lo Yamara Elo Lachadid Batalmidav. The reason why I said it's a Kavachaymer is only Lachadid Batalmidav. Rashi is Shatim, to sharpen the minds of his Talmidim. One is Sheyikshla Tshuva, that they should ask a kasha on it and to create a certain back and forth in the shir. Or Rashi says, because a Kavachaymer is one of the only Yid Gimel Midas that you could darshan on your own. So he wanted to make sure that they understand how to darshan a Kavachaymer to sharpen their minds specifically in how to darshan a Kavachaymer. But Avada, that's not the source of Ben Azai. The source of Ben Azai is the Messiah that he received from the 72 his Canaan, and still, Chachamim were not ma'ida to him. Okay, we'll stop over here.